mujer no llegó a la vida por casualidad. Vino al mundo para cambiarlo. Ella debía ser la primera mujer libre. Cuando cumplió 2 años ya había aprendido a leer. A los 3 sabía escribir. Cada minuto de su vida estaba organizado según...
Hi, good morning to everyone and welcome to the 72nd San Sebastian International Film Festival. In this press conference we're presenting The Red Virgin, and we have a great part of the crew and the director starting from the right. Well, let me start from my left to Aurora and Hildegard on my left. We've got Patrick CRIADO, actor. AIXA VILLAGRÁN, actress. EDUARD ALBA PLANAS, actress. NAJWA NIMRI, actresses. PAULA ORTIZ, director. EDUARD SOLÁ, screenwriter. MARÍA ZAMORA, producer. And MARÍA CONTRERAS, producer for Amazon GM Studios. I want to start the press conference. Please raise your hand to ask questions. But I would like to start the press conference with a question for the director, especially for Paula Ortiz. And that is, when I was watching the film, there's a phrase that drew my attention, made me reflect, which was that is, we've got to have a fried in sex in Nietzsche on your chest and Marx in your head. And when I was reading this, I was thinking, perhaps Paula, the director, has some references from films or directors that to a certain extent will be an influence on the film that may be linked to those parts of the body or that make up the body of the Red Virgin. That's the question I would like to ask. Well, of course, we are creating the body of the Aurora, creates the body of the Red Virgin, and the truth is they are references that we don't link them to Marx, Nietzsche and Freud, because that would be dangerous. But if I have to think in directors, men and women, who have fed the parts of the body, the head, the chest, and sex, for this film, well, I would say Francis Ford Coppola is in my brain. I would say that in the chest, it's Sofia Coppola, his daughter, and Steven Spielberg, which is a great reference. In my chest, in the sex, you're saying, no. Stephen and Sophia share that, the head, and in the sex, I would say Selena Stiama. Yes, of course. For example, right now, perhaps in 5 minutes, I would say other names of directors, men and women. Hi, good afternoon. I would like to ask NAJWA, how do you address a character which is so complex? How do you enter into the head or the mind of this woman who is so complicated? She's very complicated to understand. Well, just like in all of the projects, you know, that you have to spend 4 months. The choice is the same. That is, and you go, geez, am I prepared to go through this torture for a long time? Because you know it's going to be anemically, for example, it does weigh on you. You've got to see that you're backed up. And as you get into the character, you're going to have, you prepare like you prepare all the characters, getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And then we agreed to this. I had to do a shadow. Part of what happened on the set, on the set, I created the mood on the set. I tried to be there at least. It was horrible to be next to me. The crew said I looked like a cabbage, but for example, and I was very well backed up. She was next to me. ALBA was giving everything that she could. The producers from the outset, the script was we held a permanent conversation. Otherwise, to get into a character which is so erratic is quite complicated. You've got to be backed up by everyone. A journey on your own in a project like this is not possible because it'll overwhelm you, basically with support. That's how I did it. To try to understand her, it's an exercise of imagination, because once you've got the real case, you're not trying to get close to it, because we saw that distance, there was a big distance there. So the aesthetics were quite clear, and from that exercise of aesthetics in the film, we thought, how do we do this very expressive or emotionally or very stoic and inwards and in your mind, in the head? And that's what we preferred to take, was that path. This has to be agreed, has to be common. You don't do it on your own. In cinema, the journey has to be together. You do it with a lot of people. You don't do it on your own. So therefore, even the construction of the character, I understood the distance that existed, but the exercise in a real character is imagination. One starts to imagine, and inevitably, if you get right deep in, you understand things that you didn't want to understand directly. I cried before the scene, and I cried with them. It was tough. Quite often we were crying after, and then it was action, and then I cried before the scene, so it was tough. It was tough. The shoot was tough. We cried before and after the scenes. And as you were talking about the working as a team, I know that you're not only referring to the cast, but also the technical crew that participated in the film. I'd like to know how the rest of the actors in the film have confronted this project. Aurora is a very difficult character, but is full of other characters who are complex in that sense. So therefore, I'm not too sure whether you could say something about what your experience was like. Well, working with Paula is easy, and it's a gift. No, I don't want to sort of build her up, but from the outset, you read the script, you start to imagine your character, you start to work on the character at home, and then to work with those two has been very fluid, and even the freedom that she gives you to create, you create it along with her, Paula, that is to say, the director. So therefore, the characters emerged during the rehearsals. We rehearsed 3 or 4 times, and that's where the characters emerged. We said in Andalusian or neutral Spanish. Neutral Spanish at the end of the day is what we chose, and it seems that the work with her is a light of fun, even though we're addressing issues which are very turbid and very difficult. I lived it as something that was like playing. For me, it was one of the best shoots I've lived through, the truth is. And so I'm talking too much, sorry. But everything went quite easy. I'm very demanding, and she took me 1 or 2 takes. What do you mean 1 or 2 takes? I want to do a few more takes. No, that's it. It was okay. I'm not too sure. Everything sort of just fitted in like a Tetris. And that's it. I'm going to stop now, talking now. I underlined everything that AIXA just said, because Paula makes things easy and very beautiful, and even going through very difficult waters, going over difficult waters. It was a shoot which we enjoyed, and we also suffered quite a lot. That is to say, for example, with NAJWA, of course, we had to build or construct these characters, had a sort of a symbiosis. They were navigating in these very close synergies, but I think there were moments in the film in which the energies are completely opposed, and Aurora's in one energy and Hildegard's in another energies, and navigating and not contaminating each other was very tough for me. What NAJWA was saying, and I've got it recorded. I remember a specific sequence when all of a sudden action, all the concentration and all the intensity that Aurora was going through and cut, and I remember absolutely break down and see your colleague like that. You thought, oof, it was quite hard to go through that. And so therefore I had the good fortune of being able to working with all of the actors, with Patrick, with AIXA, with NAJWA, with Pepe. That is to say, I had my sequences with all of them, and it was beautiful because it was a completely different energy. With Patrick, it was incredible. We had a great time. They're falling in love, the light, and then all of a sudden, absolute darkness of the house, and to go out into the shooting in the bar, the light of Madrid in the 1930s was beautiful, and then the tenderness with the character of AIXA as well. My working, it's been an honor and a pleasure, and I'm very thankful. I'm very grateful. Paula's a person who has poetry. She has poetry in her veins, and that's what the film's about, it seems to me. And it was a project which in collaboration, ensemble piece, really. The rehearsals were very enriching, and the discussions, the symbiosis that exists with the Spain of the 1930s, with the current day Spain, to get into that universe back then. And there are a lot of things in common. The truth is, all of those political discussions that emerged during the rehearsals, to get full on into that period was beautiful. The truth, and work with all of you, the truth was very enriching. And you finish the shoot saying, well, I've learned a little bit more about the world in which we live in, of the Spain, current day Spain, and the Spain of the past, and and we're telling a story about something that's worthwhile, that contributes something. And I'm very thankful, and the truth was, it was a project which was a beautiful project to have participated in, yes. Hi, good morning. Congratulations to all of you for the film. I would like to ask you, Paula, because we're very used to seeing in your films a very poetic and lyrical sort of voice in your films. And I'm not too sure whether you're telling a true story based on a true story, limited you to that extent. To a certain extent. More than limiting me, it was a challenge. The truth is, I normally move very well in those situations of contemplation. This film didn't allow for contemplation. It drives you like a punch in the face, and it drives you like a punch. This mother educating this daughter at that absolutely electric moment of tension. Everything was boiling so much you couldn't stop with this script that had to go forward, and was full of, from what was atavic to what was political. And it was a challenge to change the language, or to readdress my narrative and dramatic language, and staging that. And you were talking about references before. That is why, for example, I studied Spielberg again. For example, and talking about the references, perhaps, for our film, albeit was Munich, the film Munich, because a specific individual which was very tough and incomprehensible fitted into a world which is ideological, fanaticism, and difficulties and incomprehension, and how it was told. We had to tell it in another way. For me, it was a learning process, which was quite a powerful learning process of other ways of telling a story. Well, imagine the fact that it was a true story and historical was another privilege, as I said. It's a privilege to be able to walk through the Second Republic in the 1930s. I think that happened to all of us. And you thought, we're in this world, and it's a marvel. But for it to be historical, just like NAJWA said, it's just another exercise of imagination. Cinema, the truth is, can't be historical. Absolutely. No, even if it tells you about the present, because you choose the scene, you choose what you fit in the frame, and in that there's an exercise of imagination, of ideas and concepts. You're the one that chooses, so therefore for it to be historical was another privilege, and plus in a period where, let's go back in there, we lived in 1933, and it was quite cool. And to have someone to know about history, which is her case, because I learned everything that I've not done at university, that I didn't go to, by the way. So She places you there because you find yourself in a situation like that, but they give you an answer. No, with PAULA, you've got the possibility of locating the moment, and the exercise is as such. When you place it in the time, and when it heard, Pepe Villuela said in rehearsals, it was quite noticeable that he provided a given moment, and he said, when Diego de Rivera opened Spain, we weren't prepared for the energy that was coming along, which just continues to happen. Doesn't matter how much time goes by, we're never prepared for change. So therefore, that's where we work from a place where supposedly they get prepared to give her the wings, the tools, let's fly, because they nourish themselves within a house. They had to be there, and it wasn't torture, truly. It was those two brains were reaching. It was programmed, the truth be said. Man, it's something that's terrible in that respect. But when she was able to fly, we knew what happened in the story in this country, and then the Second World War happened. So therefore, and all of a sudden we tried to locate and give it a name. We drew up maps, but maps, beautiful maps, because we dedicated part of the rehearsal to make maps on paper, historical maps, of what's happening in Spain, outside Spain, at this moment, this year and that year. What is said, what is published, what did they read, what did they have in their library, which is absolutely extraordinary. Well, Aurora, for example, in Galicia, was reading utopic socialism. Who's this girl and who's this family who had a library like this? They couldn't go out in the streets too much. So therefore they built a galaxy of knowledge, which, seeing it on the map, and you saw how art, science, these were women who were full of science and sociology and philosophy and what was happening. And they crossed their paths, and we discovered historical parts which fed the characters, because that's how you see them on the screen. And that was really cool as well. I thought that was really cool. The best thing were the classes. It was like going to school. They called them the classes. I love it. I love it. Like a girl, when you don't have so much information, you understand. That's when you understand that the beautiful thing about ideas, they become more radical, they get stuck, and whatever happens is an inferno, for example. It's like that they work for something positive or something negative, or for good or evil. When we talk about the theoretical world of the dreams of reasons engender monsters. I wanted to say that, but I'd forgotten. I always say that about them. How is it possible that these women who we studied so much were an example of civilization, so brilliant, and they ended up into something barbaric? It's a brutal decision from the body, because they lived them in their bodies, the both of them, to the highest level of ideas. It's a case that existed. The eugenic treatise, eugenic treatment, Fit-Levy, for example, did they know? Was that already existed? That was already in the background. It was already, they knew so. Yes, they did. To a certain extent, it was being studied. We weren't interconnected like now. It's quite fascinating, the story, the truth be said, once you enter into the story. It's incredible. Following along those lines of what you're talking about, documentation and research, and bearing in mind it's a film that's based upon a true story, I'd like to listen to EDUARD Solar, who wrote the screenplay. What was the processes of these deviations that you carried out vis-a-vis the true story? And there's also a phrase that I remember, is that all fiction by definition is conservative, where you're afraid to a certain extent the film was going to happen. That was going to happen in the film? Yes, that's good. I agree with what you've just said with that phrase. But this film exists because Maria, I did the script with Clara Roquette, what we read. She sent us an article saying, well, look, there's a story here. And from there, well, we went further in depth, and we went crazy because there's a lot to read and an enormous amount to read. And even so, when you start to read about the context, then you read about the feminism of the period, and then about Hildegard, and then the texts of Hildegard, and that's where you go crazy. And in any case, the biggest difficulty to write this script was not how to direct the information, but to decide with who was the film about. For example, we did a version of film was from the point of view of Hildegard, and we did another film, or wrote another film about the point of view of Aurora, and we decided it had to be both of them at the same time. That's why the film has the point of view of both of them, and it tries to, it's the vision of the world of both of them. And that's what occupied our mind, that decision. And I want to think that we're making cinema to make a better world, but I also want to think that any type of film that we make, or movies that we make, will set fixed ideas, it will archive ideas, and so therefore it will conserve them. The idea of conserving ideas, or preserving ideas, which what makes films conservative, and that terrifies me, by the way. But I think it's good. Let's play this game, and it's all good. And there was a question, quite a radical question, with both of them in the first meeting that we held, which was very beautiful and fascinating, that you've always got the good fortune of planting a seed like this, and then we met each other, which was the fact of, no, this isn't a story of an event, of the outburst of a mother that irrationally kills a daughter. No, it's not she wasn't crazy, she wasn't a psychopath, albeit, but she was a fanatic. And that was the first conversation that we held, which was beautiful. And to replace the fact that it's a story of a fanatic, and so therefore it becomes a political story, and it turns into a story of ideas that are someplace else, okay, celeste ideas. But that conversation, that decision was very beautiful, and I remember it very much, and I say it because I think it seems to me a clear statement. As we get, someone was saying of understanding Aurora's character. I have a 4-month baby, so therefore I've got, in 4 months is now when scientists say, I don't know anything, but now scientists say when the creature, my baby knows that her mother's body is not her body, which is something physical, is understanding that she has her own body. This moment after 4 months, it's happened to all of us that are here. So therefore, it's not so difficult to understand Aurora, that the body of her daughter considers it to be her own. This idea of a sculpture, which was in the script, but then PAULA clearly materialized it. I think it's a key issue to understand Aurora's character. And that's all I want to say, that I celebrate this. I don't think, it seems to me, even if she's a mysterious character that we don't completely understand, I don't think it's impossible to have empathy with her, because the film's about, well, Jesus, Hildegard could be the good, and Aurora is the evil person. No, the film doesn't do this. I think that's interesting, that it's outside this dichotomy, so to speak.
Hola.
Hi, you've entered into the issue that you want to ask. Yeah, PAULA, the film, has a lot of physicity, so we say. There you say that there's a mental side, and a body, sort of corporal side. And how have you talked about the case, for example, Aurora and Hildegard, they have an emotional wall, but Aurora, however, protects her, touches her a lot, she praises her. All of this work and touching, taking care of herself, protect her with her body. The physical side of things from the body, which is something that Eduardo said is true, to separate yourself from the body of your mother, knowing that she doesn't belong to me. This physical side is clinical. There's something scientific in the way Aurora understands the world, which is quite interesting. She writes a treaty that she never signed. There's a world there. And the physicist, she wanted her daughter to be brilliant. She was an intellectual prodigy. She wanted to be strong, sports, take care of her food. She bathed her, hygiene, but all from a clinical standpoint. And the physical side of things, the affective side of things, comes from more characters like Macarena or Abel, those characters. And this is in relation to a concept or a general proposal that we did in the film of the physicity of the film, the physical side of things, the sensorial level of the film, because film is affective, sensorial, ideas are there, but they have to permeate into the physical side of things, and that is why I like to work in the texture, the color, light, the material, the air, the movement, the look, and the glances and the bodies per se. And as we did in the whole film for all of the crew and the actors as well, the cast, it's a Nietzschean sort of film. Nietzsche wanted to create a Superman and Aurora wanted to create the Superwoman. And that idea we generated like two physical worlds. One was the Apollineal world of theirs, who was perfect, harmonic, cold, clinical, and the Dionysiac, which is in the mind, the Dionysian, for example, which is the external world, which is imperfect. They always dress in black, in a house with cold material and metallic colors, very clean colors, and the world of theirs was warm from what they dressed and society, the dirtiness, imperfection, the warmness, blood and flesh, which exists in the world, injustice and imbalance, which was Dionysian. That's in life, but they had their own Apollonian side. There's a physical side. We thought about it plastically and physically about them that way. It was quite complicated for us because as we entered into the character, it was much more complicated for us to get close to them. It happens quite a lot. I'm older now, and I knew what was happening when I was her age. I couldn't see an actress because I hated the actress who I had to work with, because I had to do this, that, and the other. You bring us into I was very careful not to get close to her from the beginning. We thought we should dance together. And the DOP, when we were doing the camera, there was a two-headed. Aurora was a two-headed monster, so she has to shoot it as if I was always behind her. I was a shadow behind her all the beginning, as if you notice the presence of her, but she's never there. The most complicated as an actress was not to make her sexual. That all the scenes are where I had to, because I know there's no possible salvation if you do. There isn't. So therefore, if everything that happens with the daughter would have been, because undoubtedly, what happens to these women at the end of the day, remember we're mortal, so therefore it has to do with a sexual repression. In the name of sexual repression, it deals with sexual repression, quite brutally, by the way. And it ends. That's how things end up, the way things end up. You don't live it, nobody lives it, it's not about this, it's about that, yeah, whatever you say. So that was the game in which touching each other had to provoke that horrible discomfort, and embracing ourselves, lying down on bed. We had to see it, we had to find it. You've only got one take, and you've got to make sure that it has to do nothing with the sexual. It has to do with possession, which Aurora talked about a lot. And both of them, Aurora and Hildegard, are created in Galicia. In Galicia, just like in the Basque Country, there are lamiak, there are witches, and their dialogue attends to that type, almost something which is almost esoteric, when one thinks about specific codes, but then what they write is quite specific. But the dance had to do, and the body had to do with all of that. But leaving the sexual to turn that into possession. Sexual can also be possession, but it had to be more from a clear this up for me. There's an example, a friend who I love very much and I trust in his criteria very much. He's very bright. And the first thing he said when he left the film, he said, that leg, will they sleep? We haven't seen it, no. We haven't seen it, so don't spoil it for us. When I left the film, was that leg when she sleeps? I love that scene, which how you, the baby. There's something that you move the baby. That there was a huge impact on how you cradled the baby, which concerned me. Yes. And what if I thought if I hold her, I thought we were freaking out in the shoot. I think she puts it in her head. She's already sending the brainwaves through in her head, say A, B, C, D, F, C. And the baby said, and it was a baby, and we said, see, we did it, and it was so incredible that we had to take it out because people that saw it said, it seems that it's being dubbed. No, it was incredible. A baby was going, B, B. I said, I don't believe. We stopped. The baby said the same thing. It's telepathy. That's what we thought. Yes, we were there. We'd already, yes. That was it. That was a scene, whether we believed it or not. Hi, good morning. Before anything, congratulations to all of you for the film. I hope it goes as long. You have a lot of success with it. And the question is for NAJWA, there wasn't any specific moment where you looked into abyss and abyss looked back at you? Yes, that's very Nietzsche-esque. And the director, what was it like to direct her in this character? To supervise the gestation of so celestial. What were the challenges and discoveries? Thank you. I'm going to tell you that as regards to what you said, which I absolutely believe in, and to be short, the exercise is to not think about the people who surround me, to look into abyss and Sauron's eye, like the eye of Sauron, that do not trap you. When I have to work with you, it was sufficient to be her. I couldn't bring my son into my imagination. When you use everything, you look into the abyss, that is say. But in this, that's where we were moving. And she held on to that and directed you from there. I looked at her, I said, what a bitch. And I thought, well, very carefully, with a lot of care, because otherwise you go crazy. You had to be very careful looking into the abyss. Yes, they were very turbid and dark waters, quite abysmal. And that is to say, we had the privilege that doesn't always happen of having immediate communication beyond words. We've understood each other very playfully. We've laughed. Imagine laughing in this. We laughed quite a lot. Without eluding or stop naming what we were doing. And as NAJWA says, it's true. Careful. I always think I wouldn't have directed this story in the same way if I hadn't have been a mother. Edward said, and we've talked about this the same from the beginning of the project with the mothers of the project, the producers, from maternity. There's the issue of what's feminine. From maternity, you can't bring your son into this. No, it's really a creative process which is exciting because it's entering into one of the contradictions, which is most atavic from the womb, and and also quite celestial because we were talked. It was a galaxy of information, of knowledge, and hunger, and the hunger to change the world and knowledge at the same time in two characters. That's a lot. I'm not too sure. Slowly but surely things happen. And it was the privilege and the delight of understanding each other. Imagine doing that with people that you don't communicate. There are people that are great, but we're not understanding the same thing. And here, even without words, we were understanding what were those paths that are unnameable that you had to go down in order to create these creatures. This two-headed monster that I didn't remember, of the waltz of the monster with two heads. I'm not sure. It was a little miracle, like ALBA said. This cast and crew, all of the people that are sitting on this panel. There are many people that aren't here. It's a team of an awareness, commitment, enjoyment, believing in what we did. Well, let's go full on, forge ahead amongst us all from the beginning, the dialogues, the understanding in something which is very difficult to understand and very difficult to tell. And not everyone dares to do so, because this film goes to the center of the bone marrow of some of the heaviest injuries, wounds that we have individually and collectively in this country. And it's been possible because we all understood each other. There was a common sensitivity above everything, above all, in the fact that we're in a world that we understood from the outset. I'm not too sure we're talking too much, but we understood from the outset this script. We all talked about this. We talked to the producers. I talked to PAULA on behalf of the screenplay writers, but it was historically well situated. We allowed us to go in depth in what we had to say. That when we had to adapt ourselves to the thriller, that's the peculiar side of the script. It wasn't a script. I never had material like this, because if you're in a thriller from the outset, you know, have got your measured times, but the rhythm, the pace, you have to move in a certain way. And here we had to, from a certain moment, we had the rhythm changes, and you've got to enter into another parameter. So therefore, the time you've got to provide the information of your character is linked to the style of how it's written. So therefore, we had to understood this from the outset. We had to understand it, because otherwise you spend years trying to justify things. Well, listen, whatever you want, but look, this is the way this is supposed to go. And there was also, we had to seek for a certain synthesis, and that's the greatest pressure. It was pressure, but it was a challenge. Pressure is good for me. But we have to be able to tell this story understandable under narrative and dramatic paths, which gave a romantic details which were fiction. Sorry, Abel or Villilla, or we don't have data of him in reality. That is to say, it's a narrative exercise, which was a challenge for it to be a story which was understandable and open. But all of these wounds it opens, this historical moment, all the electricity that took place at that time, and their abyss, both of them, and Aurora, how we were making and balance this. Patrick, what was it? Maria, Ileia. It seems. I don't know anymore. But remember, the poor Abel's poor character. Remember, poor guy. We didn't know it was Villella or not. Sometimes it's Villella or Villilla. So therefore, you had to make a decision on which one. So it was a bit of a hassle. Yes, it was complicated. His name was Abel, that's for sure. He was called one way in the rehearsal, and then a day before he said, no, your character has a different surname. It's not Villilla, it's Villella. It's not Villella, it's Villilla. So therefore, I remember the presentation of the character. The first thing, my name is Abel Villilla, and then all of a sudden to change that was that was the biggest challenge in the film for me. The surname of my character. Before you were talking about the other two mothers of the project, María Zamora and María Contreras, and I would like interested to know, on the one hand, how we manage this project, where it stems from, because there's an issue that Eduard said the project emerges from you, and then on the other hand, how is it going to be born? There's going to be premiered in movie theaters, but in a platform. I'd like to know the past and the future from both of you. Well, the first thing, allow me to thank the San Sebastian Film Festival for inviting us. We're very happy to be here. And as Edu has said, at a given moment, I found this article about these two characters, and I was fascinated. And I sent it to Eduardo Sola, because I'm not too sure that it could become a film, but I did feel it could inside. I said, I think there's a film here, and at that time, I sent it to him, and they quickly returned a very clear yes, that there's clearly a film here, Maria, let's try to make it. So we started to develop the project, and slowly but surely a project emerged that we were able to present it to Paula. I was thinking, who could do this, shoot this? And then that Paula is an expert. She's a freaky of Hildegard. I had no idea. I sent it to her, and at 20 minutes, she calls me on the phone. I sent her an email. She said, Maria, well, but this character, I know it off by heart. I studied it at university, and she started to talk. She knew much more than we did about the character, but by a long shot. So therefore, I got it right. So therefore, that's why I think she's a good director. Plus, she had that galaxy of knowledge that she had, Aurora had as well as she had. So therefore, time went by, and we had the great fortune of finding a team in Amazon of fantastic women here, Media Contreras, and sitting down, Maria, Jose, and Rodriguez. And the truth is, they took us on, and they gave us wings to be able to fly, because it's a film which is ambitious as regards the needs vis-a-vis economic production. And from the outset, they were in favor of the film, and they waited for it, and they gave us an open palette, open field to create. And at a content level, we understood each other very well. I'm very happy and very thankful. And as regards to the window, Maria can talk about. Hi, thank you. Thank you to the San Sebastian Film Festival and for you for the project. It's been a luxury. It's been great to be able to work to you. It's a privilege to have a film now in movie theaters and in the future in the platform. Let's wait for some time for it to be on the platform, to be able to announce when it comes on the platform. And we hope it'll be for Elastic at that moment, who is distributing as of the 27th of September in many movie theaters. Okay, unfortunately, we have to finish here. Plus, I've taken them more time than we agreed. So a big round of applause, please.